Hey guys, it's Dobbo here. Now, the NRL season might be over, but that doesn't mean the fun can't stop with Ladbrokes. Now, our great friends at Ladbrokes, you go and download the Ladbrokes app. You can join Mates Mode. We'll be having a little flutter over the Spring Carnival, and also with the Ashes series coming up, go and join our pot Inside Ball and just watch this space. But if not, just get on, download the Ladbrokes app and join it today. I absolutely love Ladbrokes. I get on, I have a little flutter most weeks. Sometimes you go well, sometimes you even go better when you're with the Rainmaker. But hey, go and join it today. Yeah, go and join it today. Enjoy it. We've got lots more coming on. Go to the little bullseye where it says more, then you hit Mates Mode, then you go Inside Ball, join the revolution.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Inside Ball podcast. Kevie Walters here, of course, brought to you by Ladbrokes, and we're joined by a very special guest today. Now this lady is an amazing woman. She's a specialist in the head and concussion area and neck as well. Julia Treleaven. She's got a PhD in Associate Professor at the University of Queensland and a Fellow of the Australian College of Physiotherapists, among many other things. You've spoken all around the world on different podcasts, so welcome to the Inside Ball. What do you think of our setup? Do you like it?
It's great.
It's very cosy, isn't it?
Yes, and thank you for having me, Kevie.
Yeah. How are you going? You well?
Yes, I'm well, thank you.
Now, explain to me, because I'm a rugby league sort of person, explain to me exactly what you specialise in and how you've been changing people's lives in this space as well.
Yeah, so I'm a physiotherapist, and I started my research area in the area of whiplash.
Yep.
And the neck can cause headache, and it can cause dizziness and visual disturbances. And so then that sort of morphed into the area of concussion, where often you get a neck injury at the same time as concussion, and there's a overlap of symptoms, and you have to try and work out what's going on. Yeah. So that's how I ended up in that area.
Yeah, your work must be very rewarding as well, because I mean, I played contact sport, and your husband played contact sport, and your kids as well played rugby league. And there is a lot of contact in rugby league. It's one of those sports where naturally there's a lot of contact, and injuries can happen, can't they?
Absolutely.
You know, you can hurt your knee, you can hurt your ankle, or you can hurt your head. So I think it's amazing, the NRL and the work they're doing in this space, but we can always be better, can't we, when it comes to your head, because if you've got a sore knee, the doctors can take an x-ray and see it and give you a specific course of recovery, whereas with the brain, it's a lot different, isn't it?
Yeah, so often with a concussion, if you do a MRI, you don't see anything if you do a standard MRI, because there's no structural damage to the brain. It's more that the nerves have been a bit stretched, and it changes the chemical distribution in the brain, and so therefore the brain is using a lot more energy to work for that period of time. Yeah. So you don't normally see anything, but when you do really sophisticated MRIs, you can actually see changes of the way the brain connects to different areas.
Right. Okay. So recently we saw that, with the Pacifica Nations and some horrible HIA incidents, and this, we're not we just want to try and give the people at home some more information about HIAs and concussions and how we can maybe treat them a little bit better and be a bit smarter in that space. But I did mention earlier, the NRL, I feel, are doing some great work, and all sports are around it, because they have protocols in place, don't they, for concussion protocols. Yeah. Now, a Category 1 concussion in the NRL, which can be diagnosed in many ways, can't it, on the field?
Yes, so it can be on the field based on how the player responds immediately after. Yep. It can also be the doctor looking at how the mechanism of injury was and that sort of thing. Yeah,
and also in this space as well, the doctors and the medical staff at all the clubs are very well trained, obviously. In my time at the Broncos, and this new rule came in 2023. So if you get a Category 1, which is all those symptoms there we spoke about, like so if you're wobbling, or if you actually are knocked out, or if there's a look on your face where you're a bit confused, all these areas where it's automatically an 11-day stand down, regardless of how
you have symptoms afterwards or not.
Yeah. So at the start of each football season, the players sit down and they do some tests around their brain and how quickly it reacts to different situations, memory, all these things, and that's recorded so that when they do get a HIA, they then go back to the information that they've recorded at the start of the year, and then they confer, and then there's a slow return to play process. Is that how it still works as you see it? Yeah. Which is, I think, very smart, very clever from the NRL. If it's a category 2 where they deem it not as bad, well, then you can, of course, if you get medical clearance, be available to return to play that day, and then, of course, in the next week. But I think the NRL are doing a really good job in this space, but there's always ways we can do things better. Is that how you would see it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Now, I've got some questions here for you, just to round it all. Can you actually explain to everyone what actually happens when you get concussed? How does it actually happen?
So the brain moves around, and often it sort of is, getting that sort of mechanism or a sideways mechanism, and it actually causes this sort of stretching of the nerves. So the nerves don't break, but they just stretch a little bit, and then that causes this chemical reaction.
Right.
And so that can last up to 3 or 4 weeks, really, where your brain is needing a lot more
depending on
energy.
how severe the hit is?
Not necessarily how severe it is, and in fact it can happen just from that shearing forces.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's not happening if they don't have symptoms, for example, and that's why they do, that's why they have a category 1, because they can see by the mechanism of injury that this has probably happened regardless of whether they've got symptoms or not.
Right. And so that explains my next question. Why are concussions more complex than just a simple head knock? Because of the severity? And
not necessarily, but so I guess a head knock might mean that the force hasn't been large enough to cause that shearing forces and that stretching of the nerves. But sometimes a head knock could be a concussion. So it's the sort of terminology. But to have a concussion means that you've had that sort of that stretching injury to your brain.
Righto, beautiful. And how have scientific and medical understandings of concussions evolved in the last? It's been a lot of...
Yeah, so it's really changed, which is fantastic. So we're learning now that we shouldn't be resting when we have a concussion, that you should have relative rest, but you definitely shouldn't lie down in a dark room and not do anything.
Right, so if your kid gets a knock and concussed at any sport, don't take them home and lie them in a bed, basically?
No, I mean,
let them
obviously
rest?
They can have relative rest if they've got some symptoms, but they should just do general activity if they feel like it, rest-ish for 24 hours, but that should be the most that
and are there some other symptoms of concussion like
Yes, so the main things are physical ones like headache, dizziness, balance disturbances. There's emotional ones like mood disturbances, irritability.
Yep.
There's cognitive ones like memory and concentration, and then there's things like difficulty sleeping or fatigue. They're the sort of across most of the spectrum, and then you can get things like light sensitivity or noise sensitivity and things like that.
And there's and I've heard this term used before, like delayed concussion. How does that actually work?
Yeah, I guess the thing is that the process is still going on in your brain of what's happened, but then the symptoms can evolve over 24, 48 hours. So that's a relatively normal thing that can happen.
Right. And rugby league's obviously a high contact sport. So there can be, as I said earlier, knee injuries, ankle injuries, and head injuries, which is obviously concussion. So are there ways that we could sort of limit like headgear, for instance? Does that...
Yeah, so headgear doesn't actually help that much.
It doesn't?
Because it can't stop that shaking of the brain.
Right.
Okay, but some things that have been suggested are things like having good neck strength so that you can, if you get hit, you can absorb the impact a little bit more. Things like having really good visual and inner ear function so that you can get out of the way and react quickly and those sorts of things.
Right. So would it be fair to say the more tired and more fatigued the body gets, the more chance of a concussion happening?
Potentially.
Because maybe
yes.
tackle technique goes out the window and you put your head probably where you shouldn't sometimes. Would that be
absolutely
a fair call? So, okay, that's an interesting point because concussions can happen at any time in a game. So, obviously, I think if players are getting more fatigued, that might open up the opportunity for that to happen. So, what about the NRL? Are you happy with the way that they've moved their rules and regulation around concussion?
Yes, I think so. I mean, they're definitely doing all the things that are recommended at the moment of what should happen, and that's definitely a lot better than what used to happen years ago, where people just didn't even come off the field; they kept going. And I think also player awareness. There used to be a lot of problem with people actually putting their hand up to say, I've got symptoms, I've had a concussion, because they didn't want to be taken off the field and have to be stood down. But I think because of the awareness now, people are understanding that, it's like a knee injury. You've got to look after it, otherwise you might end up taking longer to recover.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a change in player mindset, around concussions and HIAs, even to the point now at training where every training session is filmed, and every NRL club has to have a medical person on watch for HIAs and concussions, and it's all filmed as well. So, as I said earlier in the potty, the NRL are making really smart steps, I feel, in trying to protect the players and their welfare, particularly their brain, which is obviously a very important organ of the body. So, I think the NRL need to be applauded in the work they're doing. Obviously, like everything in this world, it moves quickly and things can change quickly, but I feel like they're in a good space where they're trying to do the best they can for the players' welfare more than anything else. And that is the responsibility of everyone at the club, not just players, but also staff, and particularly the medical staff at the clubs that really they do a good job in that space. So, I think that's great. So what signs should we look for if someone has been concussed? What signs should we look for that they have actually had a collision with their head? What sort of...
So things like you mentioned before, if they're staggering, if they've, loss of balance, if they're vomiting or nausea or blurred vision, if they've got can't remember where they are or what the score is,
what
those sorts of things.
My actual daughter,
they're the obvious ones.
My daughter Ava, she's she in one of her first games of rugby league, we went up to Bribie Island, I think it was, for a trial game, and she actually got concussed. It was so bad to see from, and I understand sport, and I've played rugby league. And you've got husbands and children that have played rugby league, and she was quite scared by it all, actually. Like, she got teary and emotional. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know what day it was. Luckily, myself and my wife were there. We actually calmed down, and the coach was very good as well. She didn't go back on the field, obviously.
Which is great.
And she had, I think she didn't play for 21 days or something.
Yes.
Which is all the right protocols. But it is actually quite scary for a parent to see that happen to your child, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So it's important that the parents remain calm as well. And
Yep. And there's a really good app that you can get called Head Check.
Right.
And it's an app that's been developed by the Murdoch Institute in Victoria. And so it gives good advice on what you should do. You can put some symptoms in. It gives you advice on how to manage those.
Yep.
It gives you advice on what to look for that you might indicate that you need to go to hospital.
Yep.
And it also gives some ideas on how to get them to return back to school and sport.
Right.
So it's a really good app.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned earlier there are some things that we can do, like you go in the gym and you do weights to get your muscles bigger. Are there things you can do for your brain to actually help in concussion in any way?
Yes, so there's really good evidence that early exercise works well. So
when you mean early in the morning?
No, as in early after. So, within sort of 48 hours of having a concussion, getting back into some physical activities. So that might be aerobic exercise, so it might be going for a walk, that sort of thing. And that's really been shown to help improve how long your symptoms last for.
Yep.
So that's a really good thing to do. you just need to be guided by any symptoms that you have. If you say you've got a baseline bit of a headache of 2 out of 10, say, and you go for a walk and you come back and it's 3 or 4 out of 10, that's absolutely fine. That will settle down. But if it goes really high, it means you've pushed too hard and you need to back off.
Off a bit and just take it a bit steady, a bit easier. Are you happy with the way that the rugby league protocols are at the moment with concussion? Do you think they're...
Yeah, definitely. I think they've got the right, ways of monitoring and checking people and that sort of thing. I guess whether we need to think about some of the players that have had persisting symptoms.
Yep.
So about 30% of people after a concussion will have symptoms that last for longer than, 10 days to even a month.
Right.
And there's been a few around, and some have actually retired because of that.
Yeah.
But there are things that we can do to actually help those patients recover as well. So I think it's important that people realise that there is rehabilitation that you can do.
Available, okay. If you could change one thing in rugby league tomorrow to make the sport safer, would there be anything that you see as a profession?
Probably that the 6 again rule.
6 again rule?
You know how I think that causes a lot of fatigue.
It does.
Yeah. So
I'm agreeing. I'm saying it does. So you think if they took that rule away, that would...
I think it just gives the players a little bit more time to reset and get going again, because I think with that it's sometimes it's constant. Like sometimes there's no stoppage at all in a game for 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So I think obviously you can still get concussions from head clashes, tackling too low, all those sorts of things.
Yep.
But I think if there's fatigue involved, then, that's probably one thing I think we could change.
Yeah.
That would be easy to change.
Okay. And also there's a lot of, no, I'm not going to say a lot, but media channels are saying there's some former players, right, mm-hmm. that are in their now 60s and 70s,
yep.
which are having a lot of problems with their mental health and their brain. Mm-hmm. Is there anything we can do in that space to help them, or have you got any advice or anything you can say to those people?
Yeah, so I guess they were brought up in the years where we didn't know very much about concussion,
yep.
where they were able to stay on the field and all those sorts of things. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and Associate Professor Michael Buckland from the Brain Bank was there, and so so Paul Green's wife is actually an ambassador for the Brain Bank,
okay.
and so since Paul Green
incident,
a lot more people have been donating their brains,
right?
And so, but what he was saying was that about 50% of the brains that he's looked at did have CTE,
right?
But the other 50% didn't,
right?
So I think just being mindful that it doesn't mean just if you've got a little bit of cognitive decline, it doesn't mean you've got CTE necessarily. And people who are donating their brains, it's very biased, isn't it?
Yeah.
Probably people are not going to donate their brain if they don't think there's anything wrong,
right?
So I think it's probably not as much as we might think, but it is important that we identify it, and I think if anybody's got any symptoms like that, they should go to the doctor sooner rather than later, because it might be something else or something that can be helped with medications or lifestyle changes and things.
Yeah, okay. How did you end up in working in this space?
So I started off looking at people in neck pain and looking at whiplash, and then we noticed that a lot of those patients had headaches and dizziness and visual disturbances, and so that's where my area of research has been, looking at how the neck can affect balance and all that sort of thing. And then that was a natural progression then, because often people who have a neck injury have concussion, or vice versa. So if you have a concussion, you've probably had enough forces to cause a neck injury as well. So that's where I
And you must be really excited and also really proud of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think it's been helpful. I still am a clinician, so I still treat patients with neck pain, whiplash, concussion, particularly people who've got persistent symptoms, and trying to help them and get them to have a good recovery.
Well, I've got a patient for you. My wife, she complains a lot of neck pain and headaches and the like. So not to send her along to your clinic. You might be able to fix her up. Yeah, look, I think it's great that the NRL, what the NRL are doing, and all sports for that matter, the concern that they're showing for people that have concussions. I think it's always a space where things can change very quickly, and information and data and the like can all become relevant and available, whereas 5-10 years ago this information wasn't there. So
that's right.
Yeah, I think people like yourself, Julia, who are doing work in this area, particularly with the neck pain and that, a lot of ex-rugby league people, when they get old and retire, like myself, there's different pains and joints, but the neck area and the brain is such an important area, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's good, to be thinking about all the things that you can do that helps to keep your brain at the best that it can be.
Yeah. Now, I only got one concussion, I believe, that I can remember when I was playing. So are there things now that I can be doing for my brain to make sure that it remains healthy and working in a functional way?
Yeah, there's lots of things. There's things like lifestyle, making sure that you prioritise sleep, have good sleep, that you have...
How many hours sleep should I be getting?
Oh, well, around, 7 to 8 hours,
right,
I guess.
Well, that's a cross. I'm not getting that.
You're not getting that.
much, but I should be getting... okay.
That you have a good diet that
balanced
has,
diet, lots of water intake.
Water, not too many inflammatory type foods, limiting, processed foods and things like that. And that you manage stress, and that you keep your brain active, and you're keeping physically active as well.
Okay.
They're all things that help.
There's a lot of stress in life and in everyone's life. How do you manage stress? What would be the best way to do that?
I think find things that you enjoy doing. So if that's going for a walk and listening to a podcast or whatever, some people like to do some mindfulness, but I think just finding things that you enjoy and that make bring you joy to your life.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's get away from the professional side of things into like junior sport and children's sport.
Yeah.
Is there some advice you could give there to parents when I think we spoke about earlier, when your child gets concussed, what should they be doing from the incident to?
Yeah, so I think making sure that they don't stay on the field, that they are coming off.
Yeah, so if it's in doubt, just
if in doubt,
bring them
out.
off.
It's basically the
that's a good one.
Yeah,
in doubt, send them out.
Send them out. Yeah. So because there is that very rare chance that you can have what's called a second impact syndrome, which means if you have another head knock within a short period of time, that can actually cause your brain to shut down.
Right.
And some people, you may have heard of stories, rare stories, but in America where children have done that.
Right.
So, that's why we're so concerned about if in doubt, sit them out because of that fact.
Right. So remove them from the field of play and then...
then you could use the head check app, which would give you advice and things like that.
So a head check up as in...
Head check app.
So the head check app,
If you're concerned...
But are there simple questions you can ask, isn't there? Like
yes.
Your name, your address...
Yes, Yep. Do they know where they are?
Yeah, what day is it? Can you tell me what happened yesterday? All those little things are really important, aren't they?
Yeah. And then if you're really concerned about any significant symptoms like, significant vomiting, ongoing, that sort of thing, then, you should seek medical attention.
Take them to a doctor.
Yeah. But otherwise, if they're not... they're not showing any of those unusual signs, and it wasn't a very high velocity force, so it was, maybe they just clashed with another child or something, then it's certainly okay to take them home and just observe them over the next few hours.
Yeah. And what about food and water and that? Should they be eating straight away or just as they feel?
Yeah, as they feel.
As they feel?
Yeah.
And what about should put ice on the...
Actually, there's some evidence that if you put ice on the neck, because it helps cool the blood and reduce the blood flow to the brain. So, but there's not a lot of evidence, but there's a bit of evidence. So,
okay.
But just you could do. Anything that helps relieve. You could use, Panadol and things like that if that's something that you've used before with your children and it's been helpful.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking there before about the junior players. Should the protocols be a little bit different for junior players more so than senior? They are, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So the time frames are longer for when they should be, return to play. And so I think that's because we know that even though symptoms might go away after a few days, that changes in the brain are still there for, up to 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
And so that's why we try to keep the kids definitely because their brains are growing. And,
so out of the
changing.
contact for at least 3 weeks.
Yeah, they can certainly be doing things that are in non-contact.
Yeah.
And there is return to play
so
protocols.
they can still exercise, but just without...
Yes, but without doing anything where they might get another head knock or concussion. So, but there's certainly very, very good guidance as to how to return to sport safely. Right.
And is there any information on early exposure to collision sports affecting you later in life, or...?
I think they are thinking that it's the number of years that you've been exposed that might be more relevant than even how many concussions you've actually had. So it's how much exposure you've had to these sorts of things.
Right.
So, but again, this is all very early. It's hard to do that kind of research, and we need lots of longitudinal follow-up of following people from a long time. So we might know some of that in the future.
And how important is it for everyone, not just kids but also adults, to actually report if they are feeling a little bit not so well from a head knock, or should they need to report this and tell people, don't
Absolutely, yeah. It's really important. Even if they haven't got symptoms, those changes could still be happening in the brain, and that makes them, more vulnerable. And if you have another injury, then it can be bad. But also, if while your brain is still in that state and you have another injury, then there's a chance that it'll take longer to get over it, and you'll have persistent symptoms for longer. So I think it's important. It's sort of like if you hurt your knee and you keep trying to run on it and you have another injury, you might completely tear your ligament, for example.
Yeah, okay. And do you feel that families that aren't in the professional world have enough information on concussion and brain injuries, do you think?
Probably not. I think it's hard. I think there's even almost that fear-mongering, like some people are not even letting their kids play sport because they don't want them to get a concussion. And so I think we have to have that balance, because we know the benefits of our kids playing sport. So, I think we have to get that balance right.
Yeah, well, there's obviously a risk to anything that you do in life, particularly playing sport and contact sport. But the positives of being part of a team, learning to be part of a team, being on time, so many things you can learn, around playing team sports, and particularly a game like rugby league where, it's not just you, it's you, your teammates, it's your brothers, your sisters, your whole family becomes engaged, in your sport. So I feel the positives certainly outweigh the negatives, and life is full of risks, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I think we have to get that balance right. And I think if people understand it better, and they understand how to manage it if it happens, when to let them go back, that sort of thing, that's going to make people have a better informed choice of what they should be doing. Okay,
righto. So I think we got it all covered there. Dan, tell us a little bit more about you. What's your future life look like in the world of concussion, and are you? You do a lot of travelling around the world, don't you? Speaking at seminars and conferences.
We've just developed the Australian and New Zealand concussion guidelines.
Right.
So that's for health professionals, so that they can go online and find out, okay, what should I do for every part of the concussion journey? So initial diagnosis all the way how to manage people who've got persistent symptoms.
Yep.
And so I think that's really good. And now we're trying to implement that, because you may not know, but sometimes research takes about 10 years to actually get down into the clinic,
into the nitty-gritty.
So we've got a grant now where we're going to try and develop a concussion sort of conversation toolbox for patients, so that they can go to their GP and ask the right questions and get the best management as they can. So
all right. Well, this has been very enlightening for me. Obviously, I've played contact sport all my life, and now I'm heavily involved in a contact sport. But I feel that the NRL are doing some really good work with the HIAs, and particularly the protocols around the HIAs, and they need to continue to do that, don't they? To keep everybody, at the end of the day, people's and players' safety and their health is at the forefront of everyone, you would hope, in the game. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're doing the right things with the knowledge that we have at the moment, and that might change in the future. We might have more knowledge, we might have, and we may change things, but I think as long as they're doing everything that they know,
they should be doing
based on the information we have right now.
And if you think how far it's come, particularly in the collision sports like rugby league, where when I played 30 years ago, if you got a head knock, you were weak if you went off.
That's right. Yeah.
And which is disgraceful, really. But that was the time,
and people, you didn't know. You didn't know what was going on, why, and that it was, that what was happening in the brain when you're having concussion.
And you must be pleased with the progression as well.
And really the fact that it is a rehabilitative injury. Because some people still get told to go home and just rest in a dark room, and that's not the right way. That is not the thing to do. So I think the more we're realising, and that we can actually treat this as a normal injury like every other injury, then people will suffer less.
So Julia, I've played rugby league 30 years ago, obviously a contact sport. Should there be things that or my wife should be looking for? I'm not sure how to ask this properly. In case I've got, what would you call it?
So any sort of
brain injury or
sort of dementia type things, I guess. Yeah. So
because my wife often says some things about me, but
that's right.
What should she be looking for? Do you think?
So I think try not to be too concerned about things like walking into the room and forgetting why you've walked into the room. Yeah.
Wow,
that's fairly normal.
That's normal.
We're busy
because I'm 58 years of age now, so that's just part of getting old, isn't it?
Yes,
you
that's
forget
right.
things.
Yeah, and it's also just we're busy and things like that. So I think those sorts of things we don't worry about so much. Things like having car keys and not knowing what to do with them.
Right.
That's a huge red flag.
That's a big one.
So when there's items that you use and you just have not an idea of what their function is and what they're for,
what they're meant to
that's
be used
a huge
on.
red flag.
Right. That hasn't happened to me just yet, so we're okay.
So I think don't try to think that you've got all these problems, but if you are concerned, then definitely go and see your GP, and that there are some specific testing that they can do to make sure that your brain is functioning well, and then they can give you advice as to that.
Because naturally, I would assume, and should never assume, as you get older, your brain it obviously works at a different level to what it did 10 years ago. Would that be?
I guess so. I mean, they sort of say that, everything's to do with ageing, but sometimes it's more related to this, chronic subclinical things that we have going on, like we've had lots of inflammation and exposure to toxins and all that sort of thing. So sometimes it's more just because you've been on this earth longer and had more exposure to those things, rather than it being a normal decline with ageing.
So alcohol, it affects the brain as well, doesn't it?
Can do, yeah.
In which way does it affect the brain?
So it temporarily, so while you're drinking, it can definitely cause some problems, and then if you drink excessively, then over time, then that can happen. But everything in moderation really
is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sticking to that rule as well.
Yep.
So, Julie, we mentioned headgear. It doesn't really prevent concussion. No. What about mouthguards? Do they help in any way?
Not in prevention of concussion, but certainly in detection. So they can put sensors in the mouth guards, and so that can actually measure the G forces, which is the forces that might be going through the brain. And you need about 60 to 160 G force to cause a concussion.
Right.
So if the mouth guard is indicating, say, that you've only had a 10 G force, for example, then they're more confident that you haven't had a concussion.
Right. Okay, well that's and are they, how much are they freely available? Are they expensive or?
I'm not sure if they're freely. They certainly would be available for NRL and professional, and I guess they're getting cheaper as time's going on. So I think they will be available.
So, and you obviously advise all children playing sport to wear a mouthguard.
Oh,
surely.
Absolutely. Just with respect to your teeth and that sort of thing.
Got to keep those pearly whites going, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, you've enlightened me today, Julia. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on the Inside Ball podcast.
Thanks for having me.
chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.